We were almost born ready.
Born ready. Cool. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Very nice to see a lot of you here, and some are still dropping in. So feel free to sit down and relax and enjoy for a while. My name is Sophia, and I'm from Agile 42 today, acting a little bit as your host, and I'm going to take care of all the good questions and comments that you're going to provide to us today during the webinar. With me today, I have Geoff Watts from Inspect and Adapt. He's going to join Andrea Tomasini from Agile 42 and speak a little bit about leading remotely today. And we wanted to do this webinar a little bit in a different way to the previous ones. For you guys who have been in the Agile 42 webinars before, we want to have this more as a conversation today than a lecture, if I may use that word. So we are very much looking forward to you being very active with us today, asking a lot of questions in the Q&A, and also using the chat to communicate with us. So yeah, and before we're going to start, I will also mention that in the chat, you should set the settings to panelists and attendees so that it's fun for everyone in the room to take part of your comments, so that we're also transparent in that way. And we are recording this session for anyone who is missing out on today's live session. You can always have a look at it also later on, and you can share it with friends and colleagues as well. And I think I should start off with the poll that we prepared now so that we see where to start off the discussions today. So I'm going to launch the poll now, and then I'm going to give over to Geoff and Andrea.
Does the poll come up on that? Okay.
Yeah, there's a poll right now.
You're not allowed to vote, mate. Don't cheat.
My daughter got her first polling card today. So we have some elections in the UK. This is the first time she's going to be allowed to vote. She's very
cool.
She has no idea who she's going to vote for or what it's all about, but she has the chance to vote for the first time. So we think we're probably going to talk about a few topics and maybe just figure out where you want to start. And then once we've started, we'll see where it goes, see if there's any chat or questions, and we'll follow the flow. High participation rate, high turnout rate.
Yeah.
So a majority
seems to be wanting to start off with the well-being part today.
Yeah. It's a big topic. How's your well-being, Andrea?
At the moment, I'm pretty squished. I was just saying this this morning. I realized in the last 7 days I've been training 5.
Wow.
So I should complain with you, Sophia, and the other spices to be nasty planner and put me 5 days of training in 7.
This,
the results.
It is one of the big topics, well-being right now, not just from a leadership perspective, but just I've got physical aches and pains from being here, and we were talking today, weren't we, about whether we have a little mini treadmill underneath our desks and things, because we're not getting in the steps that we used to.
So you're already going, Geoff. Go ahead, keep on talking about well-being.
I think there's the physical side of things.
Yeah.
Where even when we were in offices, we were going up and down flights of stairs, and we were going from the train station or the car park or whatever. But now we're doing much less physical movement, which has an impact. But I think the bigger aspect is the mental well-being, and we were touching on a little bit of just social exclusion. The more we've disconnected from people, the more it affects our mindset, our positivity, our feeling of connection. And we start to, it quickly becomes a negative spiral, where we start thinking the worst of the situation. We start getting really suspicious about what people are saying about us, or what's going on with everyone's talking except us, and that kind of thing. And from a leadership perspective, just knowing that you people are out there feeling that kind of stuff, and really not knowing how you can really, really help. That's what I'm getting a lot from the leaders that I'm working with. How can I help these people?
Yeah, I think that is definitely, I mean, there's really 2 aspects about well-being. Is a psychological one, which isn't tricky, and also the physical one. I mean, the fact that we are forced to watch to the camera and to the monitor, and we tend to keep the same distance, all the time is tiring the eyes, and it in the long term will probably also reduce our capability to adjust focus and and see things from close or far away. So the eyes get also very tired and lazy because we always have the same distance. So we should really build into our daily routine when we work, probably every hour, at least 10 minutes where we just stand up and do something else, which doesn't mean looking at your mobile phone, because then we don't solve the problem, but really try to go watch outside, look in the distance, or try to read books and things like that.
Yeah, so we've already got something in there at the chat window about moving from meeting room to meeting room. That's a big thing. And who was I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, but somebody said a strange situation where these meetings are 50 minutes long rather than an hour. But even in the physical world, I started seeing people actually building in buffer breaks. Ashton's on the call, she used to call it shuffle time. And building that into your day consciously, saying, well, I'm not going to have back to back meetings. Even more important when you're here. And from a leadership perspective, role modeling that, and being quite explicit that is a good thing.
Yeah.
Using Parkinson's law, if you like, rather than letting it rule you. If you've only got 50 minutes, we're going to do the best we can in 50 minutes, rather than just going for an hour and making it last an hour.
Yeah, I think also at Google they call this speedy meeting, and it means basically you can't book the whole hour. You can maximum book 50 minutes in an hour, so you always have the 10 minutes slack that you can pile up. And I think, think when we were in physical environment, we had the chance really to move, go to the meeting room, maybe pick up water or coffee, chitty chat in the corridor. So all of this time, also from a psychological perspective, allows you to actually disconnect from the topic, and your brain has the time to adapt to the context switching. So it's probably changing, also helping you adapt new behavior and different attitude before you jump into the next topic. And today the risk is really with remote meeting that you are continuously online and you never have the time to disconnect, and this creates a lot of stress, mental and psychological stress. Also, the lack of changing context, I think, is very hard for us in terms of well-being. So we spend, I don't know you guys, but I remember the 13th of March 2020, the lockdown started in Germany. And since then, I only traveled twice. And my normal schedule would include around 200 days a year of traveling for work reason. Since the 13th of March 2020, I only traveled 2 times. And if you are used to it, and if you are building a routine around I am alone on the plane, I am offline, nobody can interrupt me, then I have my maybe even 30 minutes, 40-minute quality time. So I had the time to read books, to do all those type of things, even during the day. And now all of that is gone. It's not, it's not anymore there. So you need to build another routine that allows you to have those 30 minutes, like putting blockers in your calendar, or making sure that nobody takes away that time from you. Yeah, I think those is just an example. Another thing that I miss a lot, or is affecting me significantly, is the fact that before we were used to move around and change environment. So in terms of adapting behavior and attitude and understanding what my role in a relationship would be, I always had the chance to look at people and understand, based on the context, even the clothing, which type of role I am. And subconsciously I was able to adapt. And now, we are at home in our 4 walls, and we work and live with our family in the same 4 walls. So it always takes a while before you get off of this thing and go out. We also have friends and colleagues who actually dress up like they would go in the office. They go down, they walk around the building, they come up again, they go in the office room, they work the whole day, and then in the end, they close down the computer, they go again down, they walk around the building, they come up, they change themselves as house closes, and then that going up and down and having this 5 minutes walking around is helping unwinding and adopting to the context change again, which is kind of interesting.
those rituals are really, really powerful. Just getting yourself into a different mindset.
Yeah.
We've lost a lot of those rituals, those triggers, and it's very easy to just let things blur. It might seem a little bit strange, but I think that again is where, from a leadership perspective, we can role model these things by sharing that. You know, that we might think, oh, people might think I'm a little bit weird if I get dressed up, or if I deliberately walk around the block. But no, it's saying that this is something that's working for me, why it's working for me, and you know, you have permission to do something.
Yeah.
Similar. We've got things coming through in the chat window about standing desks, around these different things that you can do, monitors moving around, even little things like vitamin D tablets, or things like that. Just make sure that you're getting enough vitamins, that you're not losing enough. But something that really works for a lot of the leaders that I've been working with is this difference between checking in and checking up. And that's, I think for a lot of people, it's been quite an eye-opener in terms of how much do I actually trust my people? It's really forced them to think, do I trust my people? Not, are they trustworthy? Do I actually trust them? I might say I do, but now I can't see them. Now I can't just go over and hover. Now I can't call them into my office. Do I? And when I'm calling them up, what am I asking them? Am I looking for progress reports? Am I looking for status reports? Or am I checking that they're okay? Because if I genuinely trust my people, I don't need status reports, because they are doing as well as they can do. And I can only get them to do better by helping them be better. So if I can make sure they're okay, then I will get better results. That's quite a big, and genuinely have people with little sort of affirmations, if you like, behind their monitor, behind their screen that says, check in, not check up. Just as a reminder, because it's so easy to say, how are we doing? How are we doing? If the pressure's coming on me, for me to transfer that pressure onto other people.
Yeah, we even tried in some cases to encourage people to have informal conversation, and just to change the environment, even perhaps just take the phone and go out with your mobile phone and have a 30-minute walk while you talk to another person, just to change the scenery, just to give you a little bit more movement. And we try even to forbid to talk about job topics. And some leader I'm coaching, they say, well, it's great, but as soon as we start talking, immediately people ask things about the work, even if I don't want to talk about it. And I say, well, it's normal, because they don't know you other than as a boss or as a leader in the organization. So they don't have any other topic. So you should ask questions like, what is your hobby? What you like to do outside of the work? Do you have a family? Or things like that. So you should try to create a little bit more of a check-in feeling of, you know, I want to know who you are, and also I want to know how you are. And that's it's very difficult. The thing, I think, working remotely requires us to be much more capable and much more focused in using our human skill as opposed to our hard skill for work. It's even if theoretically you would say we are not physically present, so we don't have that human contact, we don't need to use much our human interrelationship skill. Actually, working remotely requires us to use a lot more, because we lack senses to perceive. We don't even see the whole body language, so we only see, you know, this piece, or even sometimes that piece, and sometimes we don't even see that because people are not comfortable having a video on. So it's extremely difficult to gauge what is that person doing, how is that person doing, how is she feeling, and we have to be very explicit about that. Off you go.
No, just you mentioned about cameras on, and that's a conversation that I was having the other day about cameras on, because it's something that really, I was doing a workshop for a client, and there was 120 people on there or something. It was mostly around retrospectives, but the one topic that they couldn't get past was most of our people really resist putting their cameras on. And so, well, tell me a little bit more about, you know, why do you want people to have their cameras? And say, well, you can see them, you get the body language that you don't pick up, you've got a richer bandwidth of communication, you know, you can have a little bit of eye contact. And I said, I can get all that stuff. But don't you think that says more about you than it says more about them? And so, well, what do you mean? So, well, why is it so important for you that their cameras are on? Do you believe that it's possible to have an effective retrospective or meeting without cameras being on? And the default was, no, I don't know. I don't think it is. I said, well, if I told you that I've had effective meetings without cameras on, even with people that I've never met, and yet we've still managed to have a successful meeting, would you believe me? So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. So, thanks. Don't call me a liar. That's good. That's a good start. I said, but think about it. Take it to a real extreme, right? Even if you were physically in a meeting room together and you've got someone who's blind, do you think that meeting can no longer be successful? Because it's effectively the same kind of thing. It's a lack of visual communication. It's not. But the focus on the meeting needing cameras on was misleading them effectively, taking them down a different path to, well, what is it about that? And actually, if they're away from someone's put in the chat here, people are physically there, but they're on their emails or they're on Slack or whatever at the same time. Whereas if you're not, if you're out walking with your headphones in or whatever, you've got to listen to the words, right? And so it'll deepen your listening, perhaps.
Yeah, I suppose is really more about staying focused, and that's very difficult. I mean, when we used to be in physical meeting and we had our laptop down and we were even standing or interacting with the physical object like markers or post-its or things like that, was 100% focused there, right? Sometimes someone would pull out the phone and you immediately would go like, hey, put it away, it's not the break time. But now we are sitting in front of the monitor and the computer is on and you get Outlook pop-ups and calendar reminder and chat here and chat there, and it's almost impossible to pay attention for a long time span. And this is also what is contributing to higher level of stress. There's a lot of people who are used to work with their computer the whole day. Think about developers or stuff like that, but I think is a bit different because it's a lot self-managed. Is a lot kind of self-contained and controlled. There's a lot of chat going on, but it's more like it's all focused on the same, we have to develop the product type of thing, while leaders get continuously interrupted and pulled in different things, even unattended, and that creates a significantly higher amount of stress. Also, not being able to follow a conversation because continuously a pop-up goes around, and this is for many people very, very stressing lately. So, and I don't really know if there is anything we can do about that, and and saying just shut down all the application and focus only on what is happening online and look at the person on the other side. But I think part of what you said, and I was saying before, having 30-minute meeting and take your mobile phone and walk around. You can't be distracted. You have your iPhone, you are walking, you are maybe looking at the video. That's the only thing you have. So you can't really, have millions of pop-up and interruptions and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of stuff that are increasing significantly the mental stress. And over time, I think what we are not realizing yet is that is taxing on us. So even if we think now we are more used to it because we went through it for a long time, in reality, I think we are developing a lot of stress which might not be manifesting in way we are used to, but in different ways, like difficulties in sleeping probably, or being more on the edge for many things, or just becoming apathic because you are so much in this routine. Hey guys, what difference is there between a Friday and a Saturday or a Sunday? Who is enjoying weekends? I mean, what the hell can you do? We can't do really much, right? And I know a sentence that Geoff used to say is, what difference does it make? It's just another day in the week.
So you said a minute ago, I'm not sure what we can do about it. Well, the one thing that I really implore the leaders that I coach to do about it is to really, really think about what they're role modeling. So, for example, are they sending emails on a Saturday? Are they sending emails 8 o'clock on a Friday night? Are they multitasking during a meeting? Because people pay a lot more attention to what people do than what they say, and it's kind of one of those things where leaders in the past have almost worn it as a badge of honor, I work 14-hour days or 16-hour days or whatever. But now it's so difficult for people to separate those home and work life lines that it's really important that they role model that kind of stuff. And actually the vulnerability side of things as well, saying, do you know what, it is tough. And I've always used the airline analogy of fit your oxygen mask before you fit other people's. As a leader, you can't care for somebody else if you haven't got the energy yourself, if you're not feeling okay. While it might feel a bit selfish, actually role modeling that self-care is a good thing to do for your people.
But how quick do you have to be to respond to things that distract you during the day? Because some people probably remotely want you to react like this on something, and some people understand that you're doing something else, right? So how quick do you need to be?
Well, that's a really good point. And there's no real, in many ways, I tend to start with, there's not really that much difference between now and then. I mean, obviously there is, but if you really strip it back, there isn't really, because there'd be times in the old days, BC, when I was sat at my desk in an office, and Andrea comes over and he interrupts me, and I said, shut up, I'm in the middle of something. But he would know, or I've got a little flag on my monitor that says I'm okay right now, or I'm in the zone, or I've got my headphones on. So I've got little signals that I can put out to people to say, yeah, this is fine. And so teams have developed their own little rituals, whether it's their own status in Slack or collaboration times between this time and this time. But the point of what I'm waffling on about there is, it's even more important for us to have those conversations about, so how do I know that if I'm just checking in with you, that I'm not actually interrupting you and ruining your day and your flow? Because you don't get as many pull requests or as many visual signals as you used to. So having conversations.
I'm not, yes. And I think there is also another component, especially for people who weren't used to work remotely at all, and they're getting familiar with all these new tools and so on. The expectation is, and that's the problem, is that you are using Slack, is a chat client. You're expecting you writing a Slack message and someone replies you immediately. Otherwise you would write an email if it wasn't urgent, right? And there is this expectation of immediate response, and this creates also a significant amount of stress and is interrupting a lot. So you cannot have Slack and switch off notification, because people go like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that, right? We have Slack because we want to have immediate response. But then it becomes a kind of addiction that you communicate very quickly. And we used to have a rule when we still had in the past a physical environment. It was with email, and we said every time you reach 3 email reply in the thread, then pick up the bloody phone and call each other and solve the problem, because probably there is something which isn't really clear. So instead of going on endlessly bouncing conversation here and there, probably understanding also in this remote time, if we want to stay focused and be able to achieve value, and it's important to deliver value because it gives us satisfaction from a human perspective, saying, I did it great, and gives you this feeling of gratification. We need to have explicit rule. We need to agree how are we using these tools. And we have more and more tools to use. There is an education thing, but it's never the tool the problem, is always who's sitting behind it. And we need to find ways in which we can use the tools for what they can do. And for example, one thing that I always advocate, and I really struggle to do it myself, is to switch as much as we can on a synchronous communication when it comes to work, and use synchronous communication instead for checking in, for example, for having human contact and relationship, for having creative session and things like that. But everything related to work and all this stuff can be done asynchronously, can be done through creating more transparency and allowing people to access information, and use channels in Slack where okay, I can go there, I was 3 hours in a workshop, I come back and I go like, oh my God, there's like 200 messages, how am I going to ever catch up with it, right? So if people don't use thread, don't make sure that there is a summary at the end, they don't pin the message to the channel so this is a decision made, but it's just messy in and out, then it's just a massive waste of time. You go there and you try to find information out of a tool because you feel bad because you might have missed something important, and this is really is creating stress as well. And I think we have to be very careful with it.
there's a couple of things in the chat that I want to bring out because I think they're really quite relevant. One is from Anna Christina. She talks about how certain members of the team, get a lot of stuff done at different times for whatever reason. In the example she gives is small kids, right? So they'll get stuff done while they're having their nap, or when they go to bed. So I'll be working different hours, and this has given us that greater flexibility. And then that's sort of balanced out with Angela saying, if we were all together, we could just verbalize something and the team could solve it like that. Now we've got to book a meeting, whatever. So I think I find that, interestingly, you've got the sort of glass half empty leaders who look at all the downsides around the remote working, about how this is all taking longer, and people are struggling and people can't be trusted, and that kind of stuff. And then you get the glass half full leaders who say, yeah, but we can do all this flexibility stuff, and we can use all these tools, and we can do this, that, and the other, and asynchronous work and synchronous work together. And it's probably somewhere in between, right? It's probably a conscious conversation about all of this stuff, and the expectations of one another have changed.
Yeah.
But then from going back from the remote work then to the offices, what do people have to think about when they go back now? Like, it's going to be a big change the other way around as well, because from going from office to remote was a change, and then going from remote back to the office will be different. So how can we prepare for that?
You want to go first, Andrea? Not only because I want to.
Well, it's fine. Well, first of all, will we ever go back? Really? Because, a lot of clients, a lot of leaders I'm talking to, they realized especially here in Berlin, in the startup environment, there's always been a massive competition about difficulties to hire people. And the other problem is because they keep on stealing each other people here, all the startups, especially software developers. The other problem is finding office space big enough to host all of these people. And most of the time you need to have office space in a cool location so that you have a nice environment with restaurant and everything around. So lunch break can be also fun, and people are also living close by so they don't have to commute for longer time. Well, if now we find a decent way of working remotely, then all of these problems go away. And we see already now a lot of people are canceling their massive office space in the city center, reducing it to the minimum, actually paying some money so that employees can buy proper infrastructure and work from home. They're paying the internet, the mobile phone, and everything is still cheaper than maintaining massive infrastructure and office spaces in city centers. And on the other hand, you can hire people which are almost anywhere within a couple of time zones, and they don't need to commute. So the whole stress of having to get into a car or public transportation, going to the office and coming back. So your day potentially really are from 9 to 6 if you are working, or from 8 to 5, whatever it is. And that's it. And you can really stop working at that time. And in terms of sustainability, is potentially a better setup than having to go back to the office. And with this, I'm not saying it is better to work remotely than working individually, but consciously, we should also consider the advantages that working remotely brought for some people who really struggle to wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning, commute for 1 hour or 2 hours to go to their workspaces, basically for doing things that weren't necessary. So there are things for which being physically present, because we can use all our senses, we can move, we can do better stuff with our hand than we can do with digital devices, even if we are very talented most of the time. And that is very important when we do creative stuff together and so on. But we have, for example, a couple of clients who already established now, they meet with the team once a week or once every 2 weeks to do their sprint change, refinement, and other things. They go to the office, actually, they stay outside if the weather is nice, or they go inside with empty room space with a mask and everything, and they have their creative session there. And everybody, when enters, has a package with their own post-it and marker, and they are only using those post-it and marker. When they exit, they throw away the post-it they didn't use. It's a massive waste, but it's safe. But they only do it really when it's necessary. They don't do it in terms of going back all the time to the office again. We also have to recognize that there is a value from a human side to stay more with the family. Think about us consultant. I mean, flying 200 days a year as opposed to being home every day. It's different, right? As a joke, when Corona started, we all predicted there will be a lot more of babies in this year or a lot more of divorces. One of the two.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you, Andrea.
Very good.
Because although nothing you've said there is something I would say is untrue, I predict that there will still be fully co-located organizations. I still think for some that will be a competitive advantage. I think for some that will be the kind of company they would want to work for. I think there will be some that are fully remote. I think the vast majority will be hybrid. And just, I mean, I do get kind of I overly excited and excitable, I suppose, by some of the the concept drawings for these new hub out of city centre buildings that the organisations that I see are drawing up together to try and make use of the time when we are together. And it will be, again, seeing through the chat here, I shook hands with someone for the first time in ages, and it felt so good, weird but good. And I met up with a couple of friends the other day outside a pub in a beer garden, and it was just great to see them in 3D. And I just think there will be a time where we really make use of that. We take advantage. Appreciate it, yeah. And we'll be mindful about when we do it. We won't just be getting together for the sake of it. It will be the exception rather than the norm for many. But I think that we will really leverage that. The other thing I think I'll say about, in terms of preparing, while there's an argument of you can't really prepare for something you don't know what it's going to be yet. But what will happen is, I'm pretty confident, is people will be nervous, because it will be such a change. It would be, we've got into this temporary new normal, however monotonous and unfulfilling it may be, but then we're going to have to go out of our comfort zones again. It's amazing how quickly we normalize things. And so, it's weird getting on a train for the first time if you haven't done it for a while. Weird getting on a plane for the first time if you haven't done it for a while. Weird sitting in a cinema if you haven't done it for a while. Everything that we used to think was pretty normal is going to feel a bit weird to begin with. And human beings are naturally change averse, if you like, from that respect, because of the fear factor, because of the discomfort factor.
But since work from home is not something everyone likes to do or feels comfortable in, what can you as a leader do to make them maybe feel comfortable in that sense? Is it something you can?
Well, I in this case, I think there's two things. I mean, some people don't like to work from home, but the reason why they don't like to work from home is because they're probably either they need to collaborate, and we're always thinking about software development or services, but there's a lot of businesses who think about restaurant or production line. You can't work from home. You have to actually go there and do things, right? You can't really work remotely. So there are people who don't have the chance to work remotely. They need to go to the workplace to be productive and engaged. So that's one aspect. The reason why many people are stressed about working remotely is because they never designed for it. And I know many people, also some of our colleagues, they rented a very nice fancy flat in the city center, but it only has one sleeping room and one little guest room. And if both in a family are working remotely, then one is sitting on the kitchen desk and the other one is in the guest room on the little bed with the laptop on their lap the whole day. And then you go like, okay, I could buy a desk, but where am I going to put it? Right? I don't have the space. And that's a big problem. And the tendency you can see also here in Berlin is already now making a difference, making a dent. People emptying the office space in the city center. The owner are trying to convert them to loft. and they are getting even more expensive prices. But what people tend to do, actually, they are going away from the city because they don't need to be in the city anymore. They can have a much better quality of life, a little bit more outside in the green if they don't have to commute every day. And also with the same money they rent a 60 square meter flat in the city center, they might have a house with a garden and even a swimming pool outside in the suburbs. And that is something everybody's thinking about. And I'm not joking. In the past year, they sold more sauna, swimming pool, jacuzzi than ever in the past 10 years. Think about it. How many people decided to create at home more comfort or even moved away from their apartment into a house because they said, well, if I have to work remotely, if I have to stay at home, then let's make the home a place where I love to stay and I feel home and I relaxed and so on. So there is a very big tendency now of people going out from the crowded, expensive area, which will of course create a collapse in the real estate market at some point, because the demand will be less than the capacity. So prices start going down because there's a lot of empty space all over the place.
I think it'll be a collapse. I just think it'll be a big shift. We could be about to see the biggest shift in property and where people live for generations. My daughter is turning 19 and she's thinking, well, getting to the point she's moving out. Well, where does she go? I think living in a big city is going to be, we're going off topic a little bit. What can leaders do here? Ask is my simple answer, because everybody's got their own different challenges. Whether, as the people are rightly pointing out, I've got 2 kids working, homeschooling as well, or small kids who, the nursery's been shut because the chef's got tested positive or whatever. Or I don't have space for a desk, or our walls are paper thin. So if I'm on a conference call and my husband's on a conference call, we can't really concentrate. Whatever the issues are, as a leader, you've got to treat everyone differently. Treat them same by treating them differently, because meeting their needs and making, again, coming back to this, are you okay? Because I fundamentally believe that if you're okay, then you'll do good work. That's that fundamental operating principle.
Yeah, and to go back perhaps to the initial question, what if people don't feel comfortable working remotely? Then I think we need to empathize with that. We need to understand in which condition are you actually working remotely, and eventually perhaps consider renting a office space or in a shared office space, a working station where close by to the house, and just moving out and going out, even if it's 10-minute walk or 20, then go there and work from there. So you're outside of your environment. And then when the work is finished, then you come back again home. So those are solutions that are actually really happening. If people didn't plan or design to work from home and they have kids at home, great respect. We have neighbor here with 3 kids, both working remotely. And I mean, chapeau. Is 1 year they are working with homeschooling, self-learning condition and stuff like that. By iterating, it's great. And also for the kid is great because the parents are home all the time, but they needed to be educated away. They needed to learn that working and leading remotely, it's difficult. And it's not that Papa and Mama are at home and then we can jump on them and play with them. They needed to understand, okay, this is work time. I'm not supposed to disturb them, but gives another feeling of safety because you always know they are there, right? But I think we also miss the social content in a way. And going back to the leading topics, when we lead remotely, we should be aware of what is the situation of the people on the other side. And also probably role model, as Geoff said before. If you have kids at home and you are a leader, don't be ashamed if your kids come into a meeting. Just empathize with it, and it's normal. It's just the way it is today. So there are kids in your life, it's fine, and they come in while you have a meeting with the CEO, it's also okay, right? It is the way it is, and you have your priority is still your family, still your well-being, is still you being a good human being if you want to role model it to the others. So sending your kid away or pretending it's not there or doing other funny things is probably worse than actually just accepting the situation as it is.
I misread a comment in the chat there from Jenny saying, I thought she'd written, I really miss the excessive amount of sweat of in-person meetings, but the excessive amount of sweets. But
Yeah.
and that sort of brings me on to that getting to know people and just reaching out to them. The number of people that I've seen tweeting or posting about the care package they've received, just a little gift, and the best ones are the ones that are a little bit personalized because you know about them, and what they would value, just like present is the thought that counts. I think just reaching out, telling people that you're still thinking of them, that you still value them, that and here's something useful, here's a little bit of recognition,
Yeah.
appreciation.
And we were talking this morning, for example. Then I mean, one of the biggest problem now, we are impeded in our movement, so we can't travel so easily, we can't go on holiday so easily anymore, and we are suffering because of this. I mean, our body, our mind needs to change, the environment, and also do some physical movement and so on. And so there are people, I mean, also some of our colleagues, they just bought a cyclette at home, and sometimes they are pedaling and they are in the meeting, and you see they are wobbling up and down. And this morning with Geoff, we were talking about having a small treadmill under the desk, and sometimes you stand up and you just walk while you have a meeting. You are a bit wobbly, but there are people who have different needs. So the role of the leader is really to have this one-on-one check-in regularly. Not talk about the work, but talk about, hey, how are you doing? What is it that you are missing? How are you feeling? What is it that we can do to help you, be more effective, be more satisfied about the work? So you can focus really on doing what you're good at, rather than being all the time stressed and dissatisfied about the situation and the condition.
Peter's asked the question: if we are mostly working from home and we don't have to commute, we should be better off. We should. So is it the case that we're just not managing ourselves very well, or is it genuinely a lack of trust? What do you think about that? Self-discipline needed to be working from home, working remotely. I know there are different things, but similar to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think one part is the lack of trust, but I think one part is really we are not used to this routine yet. We don't have the protocols. We don't have the acceptance of the fact that it's okay. For example, if this afternoon from 2 to 4 I'm going out for a run, right? Or I go this morning for a run, and then I work later. Also, this stress of having the work time from 8 to 5 or from 9 to 6. I mean, a lot of company had flexible work time already before, but shifting to remotely, it seems that all of a sudden everything got tightened up again because of the need of having chat messages and video call and meeting and so on. So I think we spend a lot of time, probably too much time, in doing face-to-face meeting on Zoom. We could probably skip a lot of those stuff with some good information and focus more on really meeting when is necessary and giving people more space to organize their own activities around the normal workday, instead of being so strict about being online and having to reply to chat and stuff like that. Especially international company who are active 24 hours. What difference does it make if I'm there from 9 to 6? Or at the end of the day, it boils down everything to trust, as you said before, Geoff.
So it does, and I know we've had a couple of people pointing out that this isn't truly remote working. This is working from home during the pandemic. It is different, and ultimately, a lot of us were in the business of, to some degree, remote working even before a pandemic. It was rare that we were all in this. So
Yeah.
It's taken it to a real extreme. Probably further than where it will be, whatever the new normal turns out to be. But this idea of self-discipline, it's a new set of disciplines. It's a new routine that we're having to develop for ourselves. When we were working in the office, we had certain routines, but we built them up over a number of years that we didn't realize that we got into routines and rituals and certain things, and we created little triggers for ourselves and so on. And now we've been forced to create some more. So there is an element of a lack of self-discipline. Some of it, I think, is engendered by the role modeling and what we see, but also what we kind of expect others are expecting of us, if that makes sense. So that I may feel I need to prove more because I know that other people, I believe I know, that other people are wondering if I'm slacking.
Yeah.
Or I don't know whether I'm adding enough value. So I'm going to try and do more just to meet my own definition of success or my own feeling of contribution. And if I'm not aware of what's going on for me, and I said this before, when I was sat next to somebody, I might not realize that I'm getting all stressed and tense and frustrated, but the people next to me can. And the number of times that people say, Geoff, should we just go for a walk or go for coffee or I don't have that anymore. All I've got is a screen looking back at me. No one really looking out for me. So I got to learn a little bit more about myself, and not really like doing that.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, as we both shared in our video blog before this webinar, I think ultimately a good leader is still a good leader, and in principle we are trying to achieve the same thing. And I think that the job of a leader is still the same, is to create an environment in which people are enabled to deliver the value that is necessary to be delivered, and they can find satisfaction in their work. So what changed when we do it remotely is that we need to change the practices that we have been using. We cannot simply do what we were doing in physical form, translate it and do it on the video, because it's probably not working. It doesn't have the same impact. So we need to find a new way, new practices to be able to engage, to be able to check in, as opposed to check up, as Geoff said before. But there are also aspects related to support people learning, because shifting the environment to remote, it was easy for maybe all of you or all the people we know that work already with a computer. They're very skilled in using office tools and things like that. But think about all of those businesses which weren't used to work remotely and weren't used to have a digitalized environment. They're all discovering now Microsoft Teams and Zoom and sharing document, and there are people who are really struggling with all of this new stuff, and we should be aware of it and we should offer them support. And there's a lot of other skills also, I think, from a human perspective, in terms of making explicit how you feel in learning how to communicate effectively remotely, that are necessary in order to be able to lead also remotely. But we need to grow ourselves as leader and learn those things. But we also need to upskill all the people we are working with, because it doesn't really help if we learn about those stuff and nobody else knows about them, right? And also what I personally learned at my own expense is that we need to be a lot more specific about things and how we mean them. We need to write them down. We need to document probably a lot more so that people can read things offline, and is a way of agreeing, co-creating a working agreement for remote work, even agreeing how to use Slack and taking the time to think about, look, when is a reply in thread, we do like this, we do like that, so that there is a feeling that, okay, now I know what you mean with it, because we are doing things in context rather than just using a tool. I think all of these things are hitting us now, and they will keep on. I think the whole society wasn't ready to this big shift. The whole digitalization complaint that we hear all around Europe, or the lack of bandwidth and all this type of stuff, are all consequences of the fact that we weren't able, or we weren't ready as a society to switch to work remotely so massively all at once.
Some people have now in the chat been saying that they haven't even met their teams or colleagues ever face to face, because they have been working remotely. So how can you as a leader tackle this? Maybe how can you onboard people well, and how can you build trust with people that you have actually never met? Because it's anyway different doing it over video than face to face, right?
Yeah. One of the people that I'm doing some work with recently, Claire Donald, she does some work at a product company, and we're going to do a presentation actually soon at one of the meetup groups on the future of work. And her company actually have a really, really good onboarding process, which, to build on what Andrea was just saying there, is effectively a lot more documentation than we would normally have had. But it's who can you speak to about this? This is where you can find this. These are the links to this, and it's really, really proven really valuable to people who are joining the organisation. But we've actually got another question around, how do you this trust thing? I'm probably going to risk saying the same thing again, but perhaps in a slightly different way,
which is from a leadership perspective. I was always taught, not just from a leadership perspective, not necessarily formally, my mum and dad sitting me down and telling me this, but it's sort of something that came through the culture, which is people should earn your trust. And I think that's backwards. And I think this has really magnified that, and actually starting with trust and saying, unless you prove me wrong, I'm going to trust you. I think that's where I've seen leaders really separate themselves and create better cultures within their organizations. I genuinely believe that people want to do a good job. And if they're not doing a good job, it's because the environment isn't set up to help them and enable them. Something's going on. Right? So I'm going to trust you, and unless you prove me otherwise, that's where I'm starting. You don't have to earn my trust. I'm giving you my trust.
I think it's very important. On the other end, I work with a lot of leaders, and not all of them are in the position to do it. And that's another problem. It's a problem, and we talked about this also today, Geoff, when we share with the people also about the archetypes. So it depends really how is the environment, how is the culture in the organization you're working in. If everything is controlled and steered top down, unless you are one of the guys on the top, it's very difficult for you to take the responsibility to say, I give you the trust and I take all the fault on my shoulder. Very few people feel comfortable about doing that, and creates also stress. So in principle, yes, we need to start trusting if you want people to trust us. And that is, in my opinion, the most important thing from a leadership perspective. What can you do so that your people trust you? Because if they trust you, then you know that you can trust them. And you need to start trusting at the same time. So you need to demonstrate trust by creating freedom, by giving them empowerment, by being able to support them when they make mistake, and telling them, okay, now what did we learn with this mistake, and help them evolve from their state of fear. But unfortunately, sometimes, and I find out often with the one-on-one coaching sessions, people would like to give trust, would like to allow people to make mistake, but the pressure they have and the level of control they have from their own bosses and leaders doesn't allow them to create that safety space. And I think safety and trust are particularly important when working remotely. To be honest, there is no way you can supervise anybody working remotely unless you're spending the whole day supervising a single person to do what she's doing, right? To look at what she's doing. There are even crazy companies building up tools who monitor what people do on a daily basis in terms of which site did they browse, how much time they spend writing emails or chat messages, how many time they spend using an IDE or a office tool environment. I mean, this is madness, right?
You probably know this more than me, Andrea. I was told that Zoom had a feature, but it's been removed now, which indicated if Zoom wasn't your active window. So if you were open, like messaging or email or something, it would alert you, oh, this isn't their active window. Is that true?
I'm not sure. I heard about it. There was some rumor, but I'm not sure that is actually. I don't know if they removed the feature, to be honest. Maybe it's still there. We just don't know about it.
No, it's not there now, I don't think. But yeah, there definitely were. I mean, the companies have. I think it's really light on the companies that do trust their people and don't.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we are all needing to learn what is going on. But I think there are a lot of stuff that we already said. We also said in the video blog, and I think those things are important. Working remotely requires a lot more of empathy in some way. We have to be more empathetic with the people on the other side. Try to put ourselves in their shoes. Our behavior should be more driven by curiosity and by the willingness to support people and to help them find a good rhythm, a good rituals for working remotely. We should provide all the necessary information so that people feel comfortable. They don't feel isolated and alone. I think, Geoff, you talked largely about this before, and also in your blog post. One of the biggest problem we need to try to solve is people feel isolated. They feel alone. Their courage and their opportunity to ask for help remotely are significantly less unless they already establish relationship of trust with others. So there's onboarding people remotely. It's harder because it's harder to put them in contact with all the other people in the company. And well, what we're doing now, we have already onboarded, I don't know how many people, probably Lothar was the first one or not even the last one, but we had a couple of coaches. Now other two are coming in remotely. We never met them physically. We just had a couple of talks, and we are trying to set up like 30-minute walk and talk things with different employees at least twice a week, so that they get to have that just personal relationship exchange and knowing about, oh, who are you and how you look like and what do you do beside working in the same company, right? So all of these things are things which we need to learn, and we need to, I think, amplify more, because this feeling of isolation drives to feelings of incompetency because I don't get help, and then I feel frustrated because I cannot finish my job, so I get dissatisfied and I spend too much time doing things that I shouldn't spend time with, and all of these things pile up in creating more stress, less productivity, and ultimately a very bad work-life balance, because what people end up doing, they just work longer and they work more hours because they still need to prove that they are achieving something, or someone has expectation on them, and they are ending up ruining completely their life and being completely burnout. And this is what we should be very careful with.
Burnout was a few chat comments as well here, that people feel tired and people are afraid of being burnout, and also afraid of admitting it to themselves and to the probably to leaders or team leaders or teammates even. So
yeah.
As I see this other question from Alessa, and I want to, as well as just generally role modeling things, I'll start off with this. So good practices about remote team building or team events.
Yeah.
I'll start off with what I said earlier, which is there's not really that much difference between where we are now and where we were. Obviously there is, but the principles, the fundamentals remain the same, and that we're more likely to act as a team if we know a little bit more about each other. And so just a little bit of getting to know each other, but in an informal setting, in a safe setting. So from a practical perspective, user manuals are a really good technique that I've come across. Just tell me a little bit about how you work, how you operate, what gets you going, what gets you in a good zone, what gets you in a bad zone, what frustrates you, how can I stop annoying you, those types of things. Just a certain level of safety. And then just little things that we would normally do. I mean, I don't think this is particularly brilliant, but I think it worked quite well. The community that I'm part of, we hired a musician to come on and do a few songs for us, and everybody could request a song. So you know, whether you did or not, you might not, but we could learn a little bit about musical taste, just sit back, have a little bit of a social, and it's replicating a little bit of what we might get. So something that's nothing to do with work, something that's a little bit to do with work, and then giving them a challenge that they can actually achieve, and get that sense of, yeah, we did something together. I think those are the three areas I look at.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and also this idea of making explicit what our expectations are. Normally this would happen in conversation on the floor or during the day work and so on, but probably facilitating an exercise in which everybody clearly declare, this I think is what I can contribute to the team, this is what I would like the team to do for me, and this is what I think is our mission and our vision, or what I can contribute to that mission and that vision. And I think making that explicit and just maybe sharing a Miro board with this information can start that conversation, and can have the possibility also to get feedback from other, and everybody can do their own card and then rotate it and give each other feedback, and then build a conversation and create a common sense of purpose. And especially when a team is new, as Geoff said, never challenge them too much at the beginning. Be empathic with the fact that they are having difficulties. It's not easy for them probably to coordinate and work remotely, so we should start giving them maybe smaller challenges, little things which are probably achieved quickly but still creating value for the client, so that they can start getting excited about it. They start believing it's working. They start, and if you believing is working, then it is working, because more and more you engage, the more you believe is the right path you are following, the more you are willing to put energy into make it work, even if it doesn't. And it's different if you start failing from the beginning, then you start blaming everything else around you. And the internet is not good enough. We didn't talk to the client. It's not my fault. Wasn't my responsibility. It was Geoff's fault, because the enemy is always outside. It's never, where we sit. That's the biggest problem, I think.
Thank you. Guys, we are also running out of time. Unfortunately, we have 1 minute left. So maybe you can give your best tip and trick before we say thank you for the day. Geoff.
In 10 seconds.
I think I'll start with pretty much what Andrea just finished with there, but from a leadership perspective, is that start with yourself. Not for self-care, but also role modeling.
Yeah.
What do I want to see other people doing? I'm going to do that.
Yeah, from my side, not to repeat what I said before and Geoff just repeated, but I think one of the biggest difficulties leading remotely is to put ourselves in the shoes of the person on the other side. And we really need to spend purposefully time to do that. We need to get to know the person on the other side. We need to understand how they feel. And we need to go away from managing. We need to go away from checking up. We need to start really leading and trying to model those behaviors that we want to see more of, and try to dampen those behaviors that we don't like. And we can only do that by having serious one-on-one conversation about how people behave, not about what they do. So forget about what they do. That is taken care of. They do themselves. Just focus on how do they behave, how do they feel, what can you do to help them behave in a more correct way.
Super, thank you. I know there's a lot of more questions probably around leading remotely, but I know you guys are also very active in the community that we have just launched, right? So if people have questions, they can also just pop into the community and ask you more questions.
True story.
Right? So we're going to send out
exactly.
some
Join us at community.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, join us at community.agile42.com. We will see the link probably in the blog post.
Yes, there's going to be a blog post and an email.
Thank you, Sophia.
Back, so we will take it from there.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you, Geoff. Thank you, Andrea, as well. We look forward to see you in the next webinar.
Thank you, Fia.
No problem. Bye.
Take care.